Hi there, thank you for return to my channel. How good your day? Whatever your mood, please take a few minutes to join me. I hope today's story will help you relax and wind and find some peace after a long day. Now, let's begin.
I'm Sloane Carver. I was halfway across the polished stage at Carnegie Mellon's Cohan Center spotlights, burning my cheeks when the chair scraped behind me like a knife on concrete. My little brother Hunter shot to his feet and pointed straight at me in front of 400 of the country's top scientists. "She's just a fraud," he screamed, voice cracking across the silent auditorium. 400 heads snapped toward him, then toward me. Mom's hand flew to her mouth. Dad went white. I never stopped walking. Heels clicking, heart steady, I stepped up to the podium, accepted the Sigma Chi Young Investigator honor with both hands, leaned in, and whispered one short sentence into Dr. Leonard Brooks's ear. He looked at me with eyes that already knew exactly what was coming, gave a single grave nod, and that was it. The rest of the night changed everything, but I'm not telling you how it ends yet. If you're watching this right now, tell me in the comments where you're tuning in from. And if your own sibling ever called you a fraud on the biggest day of your career, what would you have done? Drop it below. I read every single one. And if you want to know how far a brother's jealousy can really go, hit that subscribe button so you don't miss what happens next. Growing up in our brick colonial on a quiet cul-de-sac in Fox Chapel, the entire household orbited around one person, the last-born son. Hunter came along when I was already 3, and from that first cry, the balance shifted forever. Mom carried him everywhere like he was made of glass. Dad spent entire weekends building him a treehouse with a rope ladder and a working zip line before Hunter could even walk properly. Every Christmas card had him dead center, blonde curls glowing under the lights, while I hovered on the side, half my face cropped out, smiling the way big sisters are trained to smile. Birthdays were parades. Relatives drove in from 3 states just to watch him blow out candles. Gifts piled so high they blocked the fireplace. I received practical things: books, cardigans, a new backpack. Hunter got the PlayStation, the dirt bike, the golden retriever puppy that chewed my shoes for a year. When I quietly asked why the difference, Mom brushed my hair back and said, "He's the baby Sloane. Let him have his moment." At every family dinner, Aunt Diane would pinch his cheeks until they turned red and declare to the entire table, "Boys carry the family name forward. Girls just have to be sweet and quiet." No one ever argued. Dad would clear his throat and reach for the mashed potatoes. Mom would give my knee a warning squeeze under the table as if silence was the same as love. I started bringing home perfect report cards in elementary school, spelling bee trophies in 4th grade, science fair blue ribbons every spring. Each victory earned me a quick hug and "That's wonderful, honey," before the conversation swung right back to whatever Hunter had done that day, usually nothing at all. If I ever looked hurt, Mom's voice dropped to a whisper. "Don't make your brother feel small. He's sensitive." By middle school, I learned to hide the medals. I kept them in a shoebox at the back of my closet instead of on the living room shelf. When college recruiters started mailing thick envelopes with my name on them, Dad glanced at the return addresses and slid the packets across the table to Hunter in case Hunter ever wants to look. Hunter laughed, used one as a coaster, and spilled Mountain Dew all over Carnegie Mellon's brochure. Nobody told him to clean it up. High school made the pattern sharper. I loaded my schedule with every AP class available and still pulled a 4.0. Hunter skipped classes, failed tests, and got endless second chances because Aunt Diane would call the principal in tears about family pressure. Counselors pulled me aside and said almost apologetically that I was making it hard for him to find his own path. I started believing my path was to disappear, so his could stay wide open. I applied to every merit scholarship in the country and won most of them. The day the full-ride acceptance from Carnegie Mellon arrived, I waited until Hunter left for a friend's house before I showed my parents. Mom's eyes filled with tears. She hugged me tight, then immediately lowered her voice. Maybe hold off telling your brother for a few days. You know how jealous he gets. That same evening, I stood outside the kitchen and heard her on the phone with Aunt Diane. Yes, full scholarship. Top program. We're so proud. But Hunter's really struggling right now, so we have to be careful how we celebrate. The house tilted a little more that night, and I felt the floor start to slope under my feet. The semester I received the full NSF grant and moved into the Carnegie Mellon Lab full-time, I thought I had finally escaped the gravity of Fox Chapel. I left with 2 duffels and a backpack at 4:47 a.m. while everyone else slept. No goodbye hugs, no teary send-off. The lab on the 7th floor became my real home, a narrow couch under buzzing lights, a mini fridge humming beside the centrifuge, the smell of ethanol and dry ice in the air 24 hours a day. My project was nanoparticle carriers that could slip past the blood-pancreas barrier. The grant paid for everything, including a brand new scanning electron microscope that cost $300,000 and arrived in a crate so large it needed its own forklift. Hunter, on the other hand, quit community college the same month. He told Mom the professors were boring and the classes were a waste of time. 2 weeks later, his old Jeep was parked permanently in the driveway back home, and his gaming setup reappeared in the basement. Mom's only comment in the family group chat was a single blue heart emoji. 6 weeks into my new life, the first strike came. I walked in at 5:20 a.m. to calibrate the microscope and found the 100x objective lens destroyed. Someone had unscrewed the cap and poured pure nitric acid directly onto the platinum coating. The metal had bubbled and pitted like it had been burned by lava. Nothing else in the clean room was touched. No broken glassware, no spilled reagents, no footprints. Just that one lens, the most expensive and hardest to replace. Security footage showed a figure in a black hoodie using my keycard at 2:11 a.m. The face was hidden under the hood. The gait looked practiced. The department filed an insurance claim and called it targeted vandalism. I ordered a replacement lens from Germany and paid rush shipping out of my own stipend. I told myself it was a random psycho. I tripled my password, started sleeping with the lab keys around my neck. 3 months later, the second strike hit harder. I had spent 14 relentless months cultivating a unique line of human pancreatic adenocarcinoma cells that resisted every existing therapy. They were slow-growing, temperamental, and absolutely irreplaceable for my upcoming milestone meeting. On a Thursday evening, I logged into the server to download the newest confocal scans and found every folder wiped clean. Not corrupted, deliberately deleted. Every subfolder, every raw file, every backup iteration overwritten with zeros. The deletion job had started at 11:47 p.m. the previous night and finished in 8 minutes and 43 seconds, again executed under my credentials. The server room camera feeds for that night showed nothing but static. Someone had looped 30 minutes of empty hallway. Aspen was already at her bench when I stumbled in that morning. She took one look at my face, glanced at the blank screen, and went completely still. She didn't ask what happened. She didn't offer comfort. She just met my eyes across the sterile white room, held the stare for 3 full seconds, and gave the tiniest shake of her head. The message was crystal clear. This is not an accident. Someone is trying to erase you. I spent the following week interviewing every person who had ever shared lab space with me. I checked alibis, looked for grudges, even pulled the visitor logs myself. Nothing added up. I salvaged what I could from an old frozen vial that had somehow escaped the purge and started the cell line over from scratch. The milestone presentation was postponed 6 weeks. My advisor called it unfortunate timing. I called it survival. But in the quiet hours between midnight and dawn, when the building was empty except for the hum of the incubators, that same question circled like a shark. Who else knew my exact keycard, pin, my server login rhythm, and exactly which losses would wound the deepest? I still refused to say the name out loud. Exactly 12 months before the Sigma Xi ceremony, the attacks became impossible to ignore. I had poured 2 full years into a first author paper for Nature Biomedical Engineering. Every Western blot was run in triplicate. Every mouse cohort imaged under the same settings, every statistical model stress-tested, until the p-values were bulletproof. The submission portal closed at 11:59 p.m. GMT, at 10:14 p.m. Pittsburgh time. I clicked submit, watched the green bar fill, and immediately took a screenshot with the exact timestamp glowing on the screen. I allowed myself one small, exhausted smile, closed the lid, and went to bed for the first time in 48 hours. 89 minutes later, my phone vibrated hard enough to fall off the nightstand. An email from the managing editor sat in my inbox, polite and confused. The corresponding author had withdrawn the manuscript at 23:02 GMT using the official withdrawal form. I was the corresponding author. I had never reopened the portal. I called the journal at 1:04 a.m., their time voice cracking, but the system had already logged the action as final. The invited revision slot was reassigned to another group before sunrise. 2 years of my life disappeared in a single click I never made. 3 weeks later, the department finance office called me in. $90,000 from my active NIH continuation grant had been transferred overnight. The request had originated from my official university email, carried my electronic signature, and included every correct approval code. The funds landed in a newly opened account at a Delaware credit union. 37 minutes later, the account was emptied into cryptocurrency wallets and closed forever. The university froze every remaining dollar attached to my name, pending a federal audit. My 2 postdocs went unpaid for 6 weeks. One quietly accepted an offer from a competing lab at Stanford and left without saying goodbye. Then, at 3:12 a.m. on a Sunday, an email blasted every inbox in the biomedical engineering department: faculty, postdocs, graduate students, even administrative staff. Subject line: stepping away indefinitely. The message announced that I was taking an immediate leave of absence for personal reasons and withdrawing from all current projects. It thanked the community for their understanding and ended with my usual sign-off: a dash, followed by a tiny red heart emoji. 47 people hit reply all with concern, support, or questions. My advisor scheduled a closed-door faculty meeting for Monday morning. I only discovered it when I walked past the conference room and saw my full name taped to the frosted glass door in thick black Sharpie. Aspen caught me in the hallway right after. She didn't speak. She just grabbed my wrist, pulled me into the smallest seminar room, locked the door, and opened her MacBook. 10 seconds of furious typing, a few terminal commands, and she spun the screen toward me. Raw email headers filled the display. Sending IP in plain text 71.168 to 1.417. One more click and the reverse lookup appeared: Comcast Cable Communications, Fox Chapel, Pennsylvania. The exact static IP my parents had paid for since 2012, the same Wi-Fi network Hunter used every single day from the basement couch. I stared at the numbers until my vision tunneled. My mouth went dry. My pulse hammered so loud I could hear it in my ears. Aspen closed the lid slowly and said, voice barely audible above the air conditioning, "That's your parents' house, Sloan? That's the only place that IP has ever been assigned." I sat on the cold tile floor of that empty room until the motion sensor lights clicked off at midnight. The building was silent except for the low mechanical hum of the vending machine down the hall. My reflection in the dark window looked like someone I no longer recognized. I couldn't pretend anymore. I paid Reed Callahan $5,000. I didn't really have money I pulled from 3 different credit cards the day before the 0% intro rates expired. He operated out of a windowless loft above a closed butcher shop in the Strip District. No name on the door, just a steel staircase and a keypad that opened when I texted here. I handed him an encrypted USB drive containing every log file, every suspicious header, every screenshot I had quietly collected for months. He took it without smiling, told me to come back in exactly 9 days. 9 nights later, I climbed the stairs at 1:52 a.m. He slid a freshly printed 42-page report across the scarred table. Every anomalous login, every grant transfer paper withdrawal, and file deletion traced to the same root cause, an ancient authentication cookie still valid on a 2018 MacBook Pro, registered to Hunter Carver Mac address on file, connected to the home Comcast router in Fox Chapel. No phishing, no brute force, no stolen passwords required. Hunter had simply never logged out of my Carnegie Mellon accounts when we shared the family laptop in high school. The cookie auto-refreshed every time he opened Chrome in the basement. Reed folded his arms. Your brother has been living inside your digital life for years. He never even had to break in. The door was left itself open. I drove straight to Fox Chapel that same night, the first time I had crossed the Allegheny River heading north in almost 3 years. I parked 2 houses down, cut the engine, and walked up the driveway at 3:11 a.m. The porch light still flickered with the same dying bulb. I let myself in with the spare key still hidden under the fake rock by the azaleas. Dad was in the kitchen in his faded gray robe heating milk in the same saucepan he had used since I was 10. He turned startled, then saw my face and froze. I placed Reed's report on the marble island open to the page with Hunter's MAC address circled in thick red marker. Dad read in complete silence for a full minute. When he finally looked up, his eyes were glassy. Hunter's been lost, Sloan. He's depressed. He's not thinking straight. This isn't the boy we raised. I kept my voice low and even. Are you going to talk to him, or do I have to? He rubbed his temples with both hands. He's your brother. Give him a chance to explain himself. Don't make everything heavier right now. He's already going through enough. I left the report exactly where it was and walked out without another word. At 9:14 the next morning, my phone rang. Aunt Diane. I let it ring 5 full times before answering. She launched in without greeting. Your father told me everything about your little midnight visit. Storming in at 3 in the morning, throwing papers around like you're on some TV crime show. Hunter is struggling. He has been struggling for years while you collect awards and grants. The least you could do is show some compassion instead of playing the wounded princess. I listened until she ran out of breath. When the line went quiet, I pressed end, blocked the number, and stared at the black screen for a long time. That was the moment I stopped asking for help and started preparing for war. 8 weeks before the ceremony, I stopped reacting and started preparing. I found Camilla Reyes through a former lab mate whose husband had survived academic identity theft. Her office sat on the 32nd floor of the U.S. Steel Tower floor-to-ceiling windows, looking down on the 3 rivers. I walked in carrying a banker's box heavy enough to make my arms ache and set it on her polished table. She flipped through the pages once, closed the lid, and met my eyes without blinking. Civil case is mine. Criminal case belongs to the FBI. You decide how loud you want the explosion. I told her I wanted silence until the exact second I pressed the button. 3 nights later, I emailed Dr. Leonard Brooks and requested 15 minutes after regular hours. He replied in 4 minutes. My office, Thursday, 9 p.m. Door unlocked. I arrived at 8:57 with a fresh manila envelope sealed with red evidence tape. He was alone, sleeves rolled up, tie loosened, reading glasses halfway down his nose. I slid the envelope across the mahogany desk. He opened it, read the executive summary, then the IP logs, then the cookie authentication chain. 10 full minutes of silence. When he finally looked up, there was no shock, only a deep, tired recognition. I've seen sibling rivalry, he said quietly. I've never seen one sibling try to professionally murder the other. Whatever you need from this office on ceremony night, you have it. No questions. I thanked him, left a second sealed copy in his top drawer, and walked out. Reed had already done what I asked him not to do until I gave the final word. 2 days later, a PDF landed in my inbox, official letterhead from the FBI Cyber Division Pittsburgh Field Office. It confirmed receipt of the complete forensic package assigned case number 25, PIT 471903 and stated that agents were on standby to execute search and arrest warrants the moment probable cause was formally presented. The signature belonged to Special Agent Lauren M. Whitaker, no relation. I read the letter 4 times, saved it in 3 separate encrypted locations, and produced 4 identical USB drives, each one labeled only with a small red dot. That same night, I opened the family group chat for the first time in months. Mom had posted a photo of Hunter asleep on the couch in a brand new Steelers hoodie caption, "My baby needed new clothes." 17 heart emojis. Aunt Diane had replied, "So proud of my favorite nephew," followed by 12 prayer hand emojis and 3 crying, laughing faces. I stared at the screen until the pixels burned. Then I pressed and held the chat name selected Leave Group Confirmed and watched every past message disappear into gray. No one noticed. No one sent a single question mark. From that moment forward, every action was deliberate. I mirrored every server log, printed every email chain in triplicate, recorded every phone call with a time-stamped app. I slept 4 hours a night, ran on black coffee and pure focus, and rehearsed the exact sequence of events in my head until I could do it blindfolded. I was no longer waiting to be saved. I was building the trap myself. The night of the Sigma Chi honors, the auditorium smelled like oak and old money. Kohan University Center had been transformed into something almost sacred: crystal chandeliers, dimmed to a warm gold rose of dark suits and silk gowns, champagne flutes catching every shard of light. 400 of the country's sharpest scientific minds filled the velvet seats, programs folded neatly in their laps. I wore the plain black dress I had bought specifically for this evening, cut high at the neck. No jewelry except the tiny USB on a thin silver chain hidden beneath the fabric. My family sat front row center, exactly where the ushers had been instructed to seat them. Mom in navy silk clutching her program like a hymnal. Dad in the same gray suit he had worn to my high school graduation, shoulders stiff. Aunt Diane in loud emerald with a matching fascinator already dabbing at non-existent tears. Hunter was wedged between them in a rented tux that strained at the shoulders and shone cheap under the lights. Eyes bloodshot, knee-bouncing, non-stop, fingers tugging at the too-tight collar. The program flowed like clockwork. Opening remarks, lifetime achievement awards, polite applause after every name. My category was last, the Young Investigator honor. When the MC finally said Sloan Carver, Carnegie Mellon University, for pioneering nanoparticle therapeutics in pancreatic cancer. The clapping was generous, almost warm. I walked up the carpeted side steps, heels silent, took the heavy crystal certificate with both hands and turned to face the podium. Dr. Leonard Brooks stood beside me in full academic regalia, crimson hood bright against black expression perfectly neutral. I leaned in, lips barely moving close enough that only he could hear. "It's time." He gave one slow, grave nod and lifted 2 fingers off the podium in a small, practiced signal. Hunter exploded out of his seat. "She stole everything from me." His voice cracked through the auditorium like breaking glass. 400 heads snapped forward, phones shot up. A collective gasp sucked every ounce of oxygen from the room. Mom's hand flew to her mouth. Dad half rose, then sank back down. Aunt Diane's mouth opened in a perfect circle of shock. I stayed exactly where I was, certificate steady in my grip, eyes fixed straight ahead. 3 men in dark anonymous suits, who had been standing motionless at the side aisles since the house lights first dimmed, moved in perfect synchronization. No shouting, no running. One took Hunter's left arm, one the right. The third placed a calm, immovable hand between his shoulder blades. They guided him backward down the center aisle with the quiet authority of people who had done this before. Hunter tried to dig his rented shoes into the carpet, tried to twist, mouth still working, but the men were larger, trained, and utterly silent. His shoes scraped once, twice, then nothing. Aunt Diane let out one sharp animal cry before Dad clamped a hand over her wrist and pulled her back into the seat. The entire removal took 14 seconds. The double doors at the back closed with a soft final thud. The auditorium remained frozen for one more heartbeat. Then Dr. Brooks cleared his throat into the microphone, voice calm as ever. "Thank you, Dr. Carver, for that unexpected interlude. Let us continue with the program." Scattered nervous laughter rippled, then genuine applause louder than before, almost grateful for permission to breathe again. Cameras flashed in my direction. I allowed the smallest, coldest curve of a smile and walked off stage left. Backstage, a coordinator pressed a glass of water into my hand that I never drank. Through a gap in the curtain, I watched my family being quietly escorted out a side exit 2 minutes later. Aunt Diane was sobbing into a tissue mascara streaking. Dad looked 20 years older, shoulders collapsed. Hunter's face was crimson, mouth still moving furiously, but no sound reached me. I never once turned around to see if any of them looked back. The rest of the ceremony blurred into handshakes, congratulations, and careful whispers behind programs. People kept saying groundbreaking work and truly remarkable while stealing glances at the empty front row seats. I answered every question posed for every photo and felt the strange metallic calm of a bomb that had finally gone off exactly on schedule. When the house lights came up and the crowd flowed toward the reception, I slipped out the stage door alone, crossed the dark campus, and stood under the orange glow of a street lamp outside my lab building. The night air was cold enough to burn my lungs. I had waited years for this moment. It tasted like steel and absolute silence. 17 days later, at 6:07 a.m., 2 Pittsburgh PD detectives and 1 FBI agent knocked on my parents' door in Fox Chapel. I know the exact minute because the Ring camera notification pinged my phone while I was standing at the kitchen counter of my new apartment, coffee halfway to my lips. I opened the live feed and watched it all in real time. Dad answered in the same faded blue bathrobe he'd worn for 15 years, hair sticking up, eyes still swollen from sleep. Mom appeared behind him in flannel pajamas, phone clutched to her chest like a shield. The agent's flashed credentials spoke too low for the microphone to catch, then stepped aside. 2 uniformed officers moved forward. Hunter shuffled out in gray sweatpants and an old Steelers t-shirt, barefoot, blinking against the pale morning light. He looked smaller than I remembered. When the cuffs clicked on his wrists, he didn't fight. He just stared at the agents like he was waiting for someone to yell, "Cut." They read the charges in calm, practiced voices: multiple violations of the Computer Fraud and Abuse Act, wire fraud, aggravated identity theft, grand larceny, exceeding $90,000, all federal felonies. The search warrant team moved in behind them. They carried out his custom gaming PC, the 2018 MacBook 4, external hard drives, every phone in the house, even Mom's iPad from the kitchen counter. Mom stood on the frost-covered lawn in slippers, sobbing so hard her whole body shook. Dad signed the property bond paperwork right there on the hood of the unmarked sedan, putting the deed to the only house I ever grew up in up as collateral for the $150,000 bail. The title now belonged to the court, until every condition was met. Hunter was placed in the back of a gray Crown Victoria and driven away before the first school bus rounded the corner. The plea deal came faster than anyone expected. The evidence was overwhelming: server logs, authentication cookies, transaction trails, recovered deleted emails, metadata, everything time-stamped and chained together like a perfect indictment. Hunter accepted the offer within 48 hours, guilty on all counts. 5 years formal probation, 200 hours community service, full restitution of every dollar plus interest, and a permanent felony record under Pennsylvania law that can never be sealed or expunged. At 24 years old, he will carry that scarlet letter on every job application, every apartment rental, every background check for the rest of his life. Mom started calling at 8:03 that same morning. 27 missed calls the first day. 59. The second voicemails that began with broken tears and ended in raw screaming. He's your only brother. How could you destroy your own family? Aunt Diane sent paragraph-long texts about blood being thicker than water and God seeing everything. Dad left exactly one message, voice hoarse and shaking. We lost the house today, Sloan. The bank started foreclosure proceedings the minute he took the plea. Please just call your mother. I listened to none of them. I ported my old number to a burner phone, smashed the SIM, and got a new line the next morning. I updated every university directory, every grant portal, every emergency contact form. The only people who have the new number are Aspen, Camilla, and Reed. The university quietly closed its internal investigation. My funding was restored with penalties waived and an extra year added to the grant period. The Nature paper was resubmitted under emergency review and accepted 6 weeks later. My name appeared on the cover in bold letters. I moved to a new lab on the opposite side of campus, took the corner office with actual windows, hired 2 new postdocs who never asked why the previous ones disappeared. I bought blackout curtains, a new bed, and a coffee machine that doesn't sound like a dying lawnmower. I started sleeping 8 hours a night for the first time since undergrad. Mom tried again through Aspen, then through my department chair, then through a second cousin I hadn't spoken to since I was 12. Every message was met with the same silence. I never answered. I never will. Some ties are accidents of birth. Some ties are choices. Hunter chose to bury me. I chose to walk away from the grave and never look down again. Blood doesn't earn a second chance to slide the knife in. Some people are born into families. Some people have to build their own from the people who never tried to burn the house down with them still inside. I chose the second option the day I pressed send on the final evidence package, and I have never once regretted it.